Testing 1 2, testing 1 2. Testing 1 2, testing 1 2. Hello, hello. Hello.
Hello, Cameron.
How are you? How are you?
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you. I can hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
All right, so I know my guest is coming. She just posted on Facebook. I can't hear you now.
Oh, you can't hear me at all?
Can you try again now?
Testing 1 2, testing 1 2, testing 1 2. Okay.
Can you try again now?
Testing 1 2, testing 1 2.
There we go.
You
I
got
can
me?
hear you. I got you.
Okay, good. Ooh.
So,
Don't
how are
know what
you?
was that? I'm doing pretty good. How about you?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah?
I know my guest is coming because she just posted on Facebook 10 minutes ago
Oh,
saying,
good.
come hear me on the show.
Okay,
So
good.
I'm just checking to.
Okay. All right.
So she says she's here.
Is she? Okay, yep, she's here.
Yay!
Yes, she is there. Okay.
Yay!
We can't hear her. She's muted. She muted?
No, I'm not.
Okay. Nobody's going to mute me.
Good morning.
Good morning, Megan. Yay!
Yay.
So we're going to be starting really, really soon.
Okay.
So in a moment, I might get cut off. You'll hear my producer, Cameron, who is the voice behind the icon that says Contact Talk Radio Network.
Okay.
Cameron will tell us to stand by. You will hear
Okay.
some music to the show. You'll hear a brief intro. I'll read your bio. And then we're going to jump on in. And I'm going to start with the question around what sparked the I Am Enough movement. Is that okay?
Yes, of course.
And then we'll kind of rewind and see where the conversation goes.
Perfect.
Oh
my gosh, you have the bookmark. You don't have the cards?
I think I gave the cards away.
You did? Oh my gosh. Well, I love you even more for that. So, but yes, I love it. Cool.
And I love the t-shirt.
Right.
I love it. It looks so good.
We'll talk about it. I need to have you on my show because I just launched I'm Enough TV. So I know. So I'll have you on my show. We'll talk about it.
Yeah, you're rocking it.
Thank you, darling. So
All right.
are you.
Stand by. We're going to get going here. I have to restart the feed for Facebook. All right, stand by. Inspiration, brave action, and heartwarming journeys. This is what the Louise H. Reed Show brings you. Now, here's your host, Louise H. Reed.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining me once again this wonderful Tuesday. I am your host, Louise H. Reed. with listeners in over 145 countries and millions of iTunes downloads and ongoing podcasts. I'm the fortunate host here live every Tuesday at this time to talk life and leadership with everyday people doing extraordinary things. People who, like our guest today, take brave, bold action in pursuit of their dreams and goals. And I'm here today to share their journey to help you do the same in yours. There's absolutely nothing more valuable than time. I say this every week. So as a way of showing my gratitude to you for listening each and every week, all listeners who comment on a podcast episode with the hashtag LadyBossLoyalty will be automatically entered into a draw to win exclusive Lady Boss Loyalty swag. I made a mistake last week in saying that I have 2 limited edition prizes left. I actually only have 1 left. So if you would like to get your hands on this, comment away on today's episode, and good luck. Now, without further ado, I would like to introduce you to today's amazing guest. We have today Megan Fenyoe, who is an Air Force veteran, licensed clinical mental health therapist, speaker and trainer, host of the awesome podcast, The Blonde Bombshell. I Am Enough TV and founder, she's the host of I Am Enough TV and founder of the international I Am Enough movement. If that's not enough, she's also an Amazon best-selling author, and she recently published her book, You Are Enough, 5 Steps to Move from Struggle to Strength. She has been featured on SiriusXM Radio, including The Jenny McCarthy Show, multiple TV and radio shows, and podcasts. Megan, on a more personal side, has gone through many struggles throughout her life, most recently being involved in a narcissistic abusive marriage. She was left traumatized, and this is when she began questioning if she was enough. For many years, she was living a life without meaning and purpose. Fast forward today, and Megan's passion and purpose is to help you, 1, build confidence, 2, find clarity in getting what you truly want in life, 3, get inspired to take action towards building the life of your dreams, and 4, empower you to believe you are enough. Megan, welcome to the show, my friend.
Hi, friend. I'm so excited to be on the show. It's been, I love you so much, girl. I love you.
Well, it goes both ways. So thank you for being here. And I can't wait to jump into all of the yumminess that you are so willing to share for the benefit of others. Mm-hmm. Those who are watching live on Facebook will see that Megan is wearing an I Am Enough t-shirt. Yes. And those who are listening, hop on over to my YouTube channel. You can see the video there. And I also wanted to share that I have something really special from Megan. And I'm going to show you in a second. This is what introduced me to Megan. I have a You Are Enough bookmark. I also had a bunch of cards sent to me, and I want to share with you, my listeners, first of all, because I think it's really neat to understand how people connect with one another. I think it's very serendipitous, and how people come into one another's lives. It was a friend of mine that mentioned these I Am Enough cards and how it impacted her. And I was like, what on earth is Juliet talking about? So I went on to a website, Megan's website, came across these I Am Enough cards. Megan's so inspirational, even through the written form. I thought, I want to get some of these cards because that would make me just quite simply really feel good. And here's a woman who knows no one that she's sending these to. She sends these cards, this part of an I Am Enough movement, cards to people to make, I suppose you can tell us, Megan, but to elevate spirits, to help empower people to feel like they are enough. I received my cards and I was so touched and moved that I live in a different country. Megan sent them to me free of charge. Who does that nowadays? And I reached out to Megan to say what a difference it made, and I wanted to have Megan on my show. So that's a really long story. That's why Megan is here. That's how we connected.
And you were on my show too. You were on the Blonde Bombshell podcast.
Sure was.
Yes. So
I sure was. And there was a funny that we talked about right out of the gates on your podcast, but we'll leave people to go and check that out on your show.
Yes.
So I'm curious, because I see your t-shirt and because of how we originally connected, can you share with me and my listeners what sparked the I Am Enough movement?
First of all, you kind of made me teary-eyed when you were talking about the movement and the fact that you said inspiration, because I always want to leave a legacy of inspiring people to just unapologetically own who they are and to believe that they're enough. So thank you so much for the kind words. I wrote my best-selling book within 5 months of me walking away from my narcissistic abusive husband. And I was in the midst of my own trauma when I wrote the book. And then the book came out, and it was the first time that I really started being authentic and vulnerable about my story. I kind of hid my story from everyone except my close friends because of shame and guilt and all of this stuff. And so once I started becoming authentic and vulnerable, that is when my life changed. So people were coming to me to share their story. The book was just amazing, and people were just loving it. And so once all of that kind of, not calmed down, because it's not really calmed down, but I was like, okay, what can I do to give back even more? I'm on this earth to help others, not to help myself. And I've been blessed with this helping heart ever since I was little. I'm a licensed mental health therapist, and I've been doing that for about 15 years. And so as a therapist, I talk a lot with, my clients, friends, family, whatever, about visual coping skills and really focus on cognitive restructuring our thoughts. And so for me, when I was with my ex never told me I wasn't good enough, but I created that story in my head based on his actions and behaviors. So I finally did the work to really truly believe that I was enough. So I created these cards, and you were talking about them, and I do have to give you a shout out because you got 5 of them and you gave them all away, which is amazing, which is why you could not show them on the video. So thank you so much for giving them away and for, just supporting the movement. But so these are the cards that she was talking about earlier. So it says, I'm enough. And then on the back, it's kind of hard to see, but there's the word because with 3 lines. And you get, like she said, for free, you get 5 of them for free. And what this is about is writing why you believe that you're enough. And sometimes we have to start somewhere. Even if you feel like you're not enough, it's simply writing on the card, I'm enough because I got out of bed this morning, right? Or I'm enough because whatever. It can be something small, but you write these on the back, your statement, and you bring these around with you. I've got actually one on my dashboard in my car. This was sitting on my kitchen counter, all over the place, because anytime that we have that negative thought, we pull these cards out and we start repeating what's on the back of the card. And that will take away your focus on the negative thoughts, and you will start focusing on the positive thoughts. So that's basically what it is. Super excited. We just became a nonprofit.
Woo! Congratulations!
I know, like 2 weeks ago. So I'm like learning all of this nonprofit stuff. But the other part too is taking a selfie. And so people will take selfies of them holding the card because that's all about empowering ourselves to show the world that we are enough. And so people will send me selfies, or I go around here and take pictures of random strangers and interview them. And you can see all of that on our Instagram page, which is Enough Movement, and on our website. So it's amazing. I have sent cards to 25 states and 12 countries. So wow. Awesome.
It is awesome. So much goodness in that. And to the point that you were making that, I gave my cards away. I didn't tell you that until just now. And so you have no idea the reach that you've really had.
It's amazing to me because I have like a woman, so sorry about that. A very nice woman that I know. We were going back and forth, and she's like, can you send me more cards? That's the other thing. If you want more than 5 cards, you just message me and I will send you however many you need. And that's to everyone. That's to, audience, whatever. So she messaged me and she's like, I actually have given out all of your cards. And I think I had sent her like 30, and she gives them to homeless people on the street. And she just blesses their day with these cards. And I've got teachers that order them for their kids, their students. So It is absolutely amazing. And that is exactly why I did this. I want, we all, men, women, kids, it doesn't matter. We have all struggled at least once or even on a daily basis with that thought of not being good enough, whether it be in our health, career, relationships. We all struggle with that thought. And so for me, it's to give back and to truly help people, you know, find that self-confidence so they can go after the life that they truly want.
So if I may, I want to rewind a little bit and ask you a few questions on some of the things that you touched on. One of the two things that really struck me in what you just shared with us about the I Am Enough movement, you mentioned that you hid your story for a long time, except for those who are closest to you, and that it changed when you became vulnerable. Mm-hmm. Really easy to say those words now, not so easy to go through that. I'm wondering if you could, if you could mind, for the benefit of our listeners who that resonated with, how do you go about becoming vulnerable to then start to tell the story? What was that process like for you?
Well, one of my favorite mentors is Brene Brown. We have the same, whoop, whoop. She's an LCSW like I am. And then obviously she's a PhD. Oh girl, seriously, you should see my room. So what I was reading I should go back a little bit. My ex-husband and I were only married for 2.5 years. He had an affair for 14 months, but after the divorce went through, he divorced me in 2016. I remained faithful and committed to him for 2 years. And he was still in my life, love bombing, gaslighting, all of that stuff. So when the last event happened in February 2018, I said, okay, like I'm broken, I'm traumatized, but I can't do this anymore. And so for me, I never expected my book to be a bestseller or to have anyone read it. I just started writing because it was the 5 months that I started doing my own trauma work. You know, I went back to therapy and, you know, all of this stuff. And I never thought it was that, but I was actually reading Brene Brown, Gifts of Imperfection during that time as well. And she actually has something on Netflix right now too. I can't remember the name of it, but she talks about vulnerability. And as a therapist, I've always done some self-disclosure when appropriate. And I'm the type of girl that always wears my heart on my sleeve. You know, I'm very emotional. So people know when things are going on, but the D word, the divorce word, was so shameful for me. And I just acted like I had it all together on Facebook. You know, I didn't have like my business and stuff right now. I was just working full time as a therapist, but I acted like I had sorry. I know. I you know what? When I said that, I was like, I shouldn't say just like, but my life is way busier now than it was. Okay. But yeah, so it was the craziest experience. And so I will never forget the morning of me pressing enter on Amazon for my book to be published. It was like 3 a.m. because I couldn't sleep. I kind of had this like moment of, oh my gosh, everyone's going to read my story. It didn't like compute, like it didn't like resonate with me until like the minute I was doing that. And then I was like, oh, wow. And I had already started believing that I was enough. And for me, it truly was that I am enough for me. And it doesn't matter if I can share my story and change one person's life, then everything I went through for 6 years is worth it. And I was more worried about my ex-husband and like his reaction than anything, honestly. But all I can say is that's what it was for me. Once I built up that belief that I was enough, I was able to share my story. And it just came natural. Like it's empowering to me to be able to say, you know, all of this stuff. Some people are like, oh, I'm so sorry that happened. And I'm like, thank you. But if it wouldn't have happened, I wouldn't be here today. Like I wouldn't be on your show. I wouldn't have this movement. And so it's empowering to me to share my story. And it is amazing the amount of men and women that have come into my life that have shared their story of domestic violence or, you know, narcissistic abuse, or just the feeling of not being enough. And all I can say, and I know I said at the beginning of the show, the more vulnerable you are in your life, it doesn't mean you have to jump on Facebook and do all these interviews, but the more vulnerable you are in your life, the more the right people are going to come into your life and the right opportunities.
So much yes to that. And I too agree that if you choose to let your mess be your message,
I love that.
So much power. I can't own that. I wish I made that up. I didn't. I can't give it credit to anyone. There's credit to whoever that is, that someone came up with that. I thought that was very powerful.
Yes.
And when you can shine the light on those dark places of your heart and let that mess be your message, there's personal freedom, and there's the power to help others.
Yeah.
Which is totally, completely what you're doing. So
I want to say too, just real quick, it no longer becomes your purpose to share your story, right? Because your purpose will change because your story is impacting others. So for me, it's not jumping on all of these interviews to share my story and say, oh, look what happened to me. It's no, look what happened to me, and look what you can do as well when you truly start believing you're enough.
And that, my friend, is what this show is all about. And so people like you who are just so willing to do that, right? Share the story for the purpose of inspiring others. You, as you already have in the first, 15 minutes of the show, clearly are willing to disclose so much of yourself, which I find really humbling and inspiring as well, especially because as a therapist, how did you found yourself in a situation that you likely have been counseling people in for years. So help us unpack that a little bit. How did that happen?
Oh, I didn't even think about it. Honestly, I didn't think about, and maybe that's a bad thing, but to be honest, I was just on the National Association of Social Workers. So I'm a licensed clinical social worker / mental health therapist, pretty much the same thing. But I was literally just on the National Association of Social Workers podcast. That's like the membership that you want to be in as a social worker. And there's been times where I've been a little nervous because a lot of people, before they, see me or whatever, they Google me. And if you Google me, it's like 5-6 pages of all kinds of stuff. But it has been something that's been positive, because for me, and what clients say to me, is that they like to know that I'm human. They like to know that I struggle. I struggle with anxiety. I have a learning disability. I am the most emotional person on the earth, probably. And I still struggle, although I'm known as the I am enough girl, I still struggle with this thought at times. So for me, it's been a really positive experience, but it has been a little hard only because, as a therapist, you like to have some privacy in a way, but for me, it doesn't matter. I mean, it's out there. There's nothing I can do about it. It hasn't hurt me in any way, like professionally. I was so honored when NASW contacted me. I was like, wait, what? Like, that's amazing. So
I think it so serves to blow the roof off this whole shame and stigma around it. I think that you have gone in doing this and being so open and vulnerable and sharing your story based on the work that you do. I think that what an example of reducing the stigma is.
Thank you. And I appreciate that. I mean, I've been in and out of therapy. I grew up in somewhat of a dysfunctional family, and, have always struggled with self-esteem. And, I had to do a lot of finding myself and trauma work, in my 20s. I am not ashamed about that. I've talked about that a lot, because we all need that accountability person. And if we don't feel comfortable, and we don't want to put our family members or our close friends in that whole mess. I did that, my poor friends, for 5 years with my ex before because I was a therapist and I was 34 and I had it all together, right? So it's just nice to have that accountability person that you trust, that there's no judgment in that room. And I'm not ashamed about that. I have a PTSD diagnosis. Like, I'm an open book because that's exactly what I want it to be. I don't want there to be a stigma that something's wrong with you if you see a therapist, right? Because this is a whole nother tangent, but when I started my coaching business, I didn't put LCSW behind it because I wanted to be a coach, right? Because most people wouldn't see a therapist for life coaching. And then I was like, no, I worked my butt off. I'm licensed in 2 states. I am putting those credentials behind me. And then I'm going to be talking about it's okay to see a therapist for life coaching. It doesn't mean that you have a mental health diagnosis. So it was funny because, again, I struggled with, am I enough to have LCSW behind my name? The right people will come and see me if they want to, right? But yeah, for a while I hid that. I didn't talk about it. I was a transformational mindset coach.
It's fascinating, isn't it? I think as we go through life, more continues to be revealed.
Yeah.
There's layers to all of this, thank goodness. Otherwise I might be a puddle on the floor. That's for sure.
Yeah.
I also think that we teach what we most need to learn.
Amen. Oh, and I love that because, like I said, I still struggle at times. I mean, it doesn't, the negative thought or the question of not being enough, it doesn't like paralyze me anymore. It's like a quick in and out thought. And I have the skills now to kind of just turn it off. But exactly right. This keeps me accountable. Doing these interviews, talking to people, having the nonprofit now, this keeps me accountable. And it's so true because exactly what you said, we talk about things, with what we struggle with. So agreed.
And in full disclosure, just to make myself a little vulnerable, because I feel like I just called that out to you. I believe that for everybody. Mm-hmm. And the difference is, like you said, is when you've actually got the tools to support others through it, because you've got a history and experience of having gone through it.
Yeah. Last
week I was speaking at an HR conference on busyness syndrome, how it's killing you and your productivity. And at the end of it, I was looking through, what it was that I'd shared and my slides. And I'm thinking, yeah, Louise, this is a good reminder for you and me being self, right?
Yeah.
So, and I got to choose the topic. And so clearly, anyway.
Well, clearly you talked about that because I think subconsciously your mind was probably saying to you, because I talked about 5 different mindset types that in the book. And one of them is the I'm too busy mindset. And I try not to use the word busy, but I know I said it when this interview first started because it's a word that we always say. But yes, when we say to ourselves, we're too busy, it's so overwhelming. We get stressed out and we can find ourselves staying stuck. So I think, subconsciously your mind was saying you need to talk about it.
Yep. I needed to talk about it clearly.
It's powerful. Our mind is so powerful, so powerful.
It is. And I'm thinking I want to give, I don't know how I'm going to do it yet. I'll think about it over the course of this interview, but I would like to gift your book to a listener. So we'll figure out.
I will gift a book and a shirt and the cards.
Okay. So Megan,
Just the book.
Yeah, thank you. So think either now or throughout the interview, what it is that we would like someone to do.
Ooh, I'm not creative when it comes to these things. No. That is not one of my strong points. I'm going to be honest. That doesn't make me not enough, but it's not one of my strong points.
That would have been something good for me to have thought about before the show, but this is a live show. Life is live, and we're just going to roll with it. So we'll figure something out. Figure something out. Okay. So I'd like to speak to something that I read out loud at the intro of this interview in your bio. Mm-hmm. You are a veteran. And I know that we all, in Canada, United States, we all love our veterans, but honestly, there's something special about you US folks and your veterans. Talk to us a little bit about that part of your life and how things have evolved and become what they are now. Tell us that story.
Well, if I wouldn't have joined the Air Force, I definitely would not have my story, let me tell you. So I I grew up in Michigan and had been a therapist, social worker for 10 years. And had always wrote on my bucket list that I wanted to live in California. But when you're licensed in Michigan as a therapist, you have to start all over in California, like your hours, everything. So I was like, well, I don't know if that's ever going to happen, blah, blah, blah. And then this opportunity came for me to commission as an officer in the Air Force. And I've always had this respect for military. 9/11 hit me really hard. My sister was down there in New York. That's where she lives. She's fine. But every year we had this big memorial thing in Michigan. I would go every year. There's just been this love in my heart for military, and everything just fell into place. And so at 33 years old, I commissioned as an officer in the Air Force. I did it backwards. So I went to school first, got thousands and thousands of student loans, and they don't pay that back if you go in and you already have your whatever. But anyway.
Not retroactive.
Yeah, they're not retroactive. So I provided mental health treatment to active duty and then actually some veterans. I actually, which was crazy, got stationed at Travis Air Force Base in California.
Wow.
So in Northern California. And I'm going to tell you, like, that is where a lot of my struggles came. I had my first panic attack. Some things happened that just were super traumatic. I had a hard time being a therapist in the Air Force. I felt like it was more about what was on the collars, right? Like officer wise, than it was about our patients. I loved wearing the uniform. Oh my goodness. I was the girl that tried to be outside every day at 4:30 when they played the songs, right? So I could just like be out there. I was so proud to wear the uniform. But for me, I had a hard time being able to like establish like good rapport with my patients because I felt like so many people were involved in their lives, like, you know, first commanders and you know, commanders and first sergeants and all of that stuff. So ethically, it was hard for me. And I just never really found my place in the Air Force. And I also met my ex-husband in the Air Force. So that was a whole nother story. But there were times where I felt super alone. You know, it's very easy for me to make friends, but for those of you who do not know, Travis Air Force Base is in the middle of cow country, which was really funny to me because that's kind of where I moved from. And I'm like, where's the ocean and where's the palm trees? And it's just really small. So I really had a hard time and really struggled with feeling lost. But for me, I was living in California, so nothing was going to change that. And so I think that was part of me jumping into this marriage as well, was because there was a lot of red flags and I ignored them. And I truly think it was because I was lonely, even though I didn't admit that. But that was my journey. I was in for 3 years. I got out in 2015 and, you know, stayed over there by a base and then started working at a hospital doing the same thing. So it was a crazy experience, let me tell you, being 33, going to officer training in Montgomery, Alabama in the middle of July, like 110, 115, and they let you stay outside that whole time in your uniform. They do not put you in air conditioning that often. that was a huge thing. It was a huge growing experience for me. So I loved being in the Air Force, and I do miss it. I miss wearing my uniform. So any of your listeners, your viewers, any veterans out there, active duty, thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for your service. I always like to start that off in my presentations and all of that stuff. So
yes, and from me certainly as well. Through all of what you have been through and through much of what you've shared with us so far in the interview, what would you say is the biggest obstacle that you've had to overcome in your life so far?
Oh my gosh, girl. I don't even know. Well, I think when I share my story, I think there's two of them. And honestly, the biggest one obviously is the self-esteem, self-confidence one. But I think the things as my learning disability. So I have an 8th grade reading and math level, ADHD comprehension issues. My guidance counselor in high school told me never to go to college because I was never going to graduate, told me and my parents that. And for me, I think it didn't make me feel like I wasn't enough. It motivated me to show him and myself that, guess what, you're not going to not tell me. But the only reason I got into college was because I had the documented learning disability. I was in the resource room and always had extra time to take my tests. My brother and sister are super smart. I'm not book smart. I am street smart per se, right? So even in my undergrad, I had a computer, because this was way back in the day. This was in 1997, where they had the big computers, right? And it would scan my book, because for me, I had to listen and highlight in front of me. So I'm a visual learner. Like, I can't read something and understand it. So, and then I got into my master's, and I actually was going to be a teacher, and I couldn't get past the basic skills test to get into the teacher program. So I walked into my guidance or the counselor at my undergrad, and I was like, I want to work with people, but I'm going to be here an extra year because I can't pass the basic skills test. And that minute I changed, like within like an hour, I changed it to social work. I'll never forget when I called my parents. My mom was like, what? Because back then social work really wasn't even really known about. But so anyway, once I got into my master's, I started thriving because it was social work and it was real life. It was people, right? Like, I really struggle with the theories and all that stuff. But it has literally been a struggle my entire life. I ended up getting a 4.0 my last semester in my master's. But again, I had extra time for tests. I, had a separate room for tests. Thank goodness, as a social worker, there's not a lot of tests. But then again, when it came to my license, so I had to take the licensing exam in Michigan. I failed it the first time, passed it the second. And I watched some of my colleagues like study for a month or two and pass it. And then the California boards, oh my goodness, I couldn't believe I did it again. I studied for 6 months for the first one, had this huge study schedule, had a tutor, and, just all of this stuff. And it was hard for me because I couldn't study that much in advance because I would forget it. So it was really hard for me to like figure out that study schedule. And I still struggle with comprehension. My roommate, even little things, we were in a car accident a couple of weeks ago and I got something from my insurance and I didn't understand it. So I asked my roommate, I'm like, can you read this and explain it to me? So I still struggle with it. But for me, I think I've overcome a lot. And really want to show people that don't ever let someone tell you that you can't do something. Instead of keeping you stuck and, questioning your ability, use it as a motivator to literally say, I'm going after this. And then obviously my abusive marriage, that's a whole nother problem in itself. I was a disaster. I was broken. You can read all the juicy stuff in the book. It goes really into detail. Those two things.
Yeah. And so there will be a lucky winner. Again, creativity, not my forte either. There's going to be a lucky winner, and anyone who does not get the winning book can purchase the book. And the website to Megan, for Megan, so you can pick up the book is in the show notes.
And there's the audio. I released the audio a couple months ago. So if you're not a book reader like me, which is funny, you can listen to the audio.
Well, that is awesome. I wanted to go back and just say something to you about the comments you were making around don't let someone tell you can't do something and, to go for it. We hear comments like that often. What I don't believe we hear with that is the story that you shared beforehand. I think it can be so empty. It can just be fluffy. And while I do believe that to be true, there's so much power in what you just shared before you made that statement. Talk about a woman with confidence, courage, and grit. Like, you are one badass woman, and you really are.
Thank you.
And to be using it in the way, to be using your skills and your knowledge and your shit and your good, good heart in the way that you are is incredible.
Thank you. I appreciate that, because I don't want to be seen as this person that has it all together, and I'm a hot mess half the time, and I'm totally okay with being honest about that. But I want people to see the struggles, but I want people to see the strengths, so that I can empower people to say, like, you can be in your shit for a little bit, but don't stay in it forever. Like, it's okay to have those breakdowns and those moments of questioning your self-confidence. And if you're good enough, it's okay. We're human, right? But don't let it keep you stuck, and don't let it keep you in that quicksand and bury you. So thank you for that, because that makes my mission exactly what I wanted it to be. So thank you.
You're welcome. So someone who's in the quicksand right now, you've mentioned a few things sort of already through our time together, but sort of sprinkled throughout. I want you to maybe articulate more succinctly with this through the answer to this question. If someone is in quicksand right now, I'm like, I don't want to be in this quicksand anymore. Do you have a few, and I know it's always going to be individual, but do you have a few sort of suggestions to what someone could try to grasp onto to start to take?
Scream for help. Honestly, like it's literally asking for help, whether it be someone a therapist, a mentor, a coach. I screamed for help. I was like, and I prayed, right? Like, so I was in this quicksand, and there's a story, and I didn't put it in the book, but when I went to go pick up my ex-husband for the last time, I didn't know it was the last time. I remember praying to God, and I said, Lord, if we're not meant to be, I need you to show me. He was coming down to San Diego, and I was picking him up at the airport. I'm like, the affair and the divorce wasn't enough for me to leave. If you show me, I will walk away. And I kid you not, that was me in quicksand, asking God to pull me out, because literally, I kid you not, 24 hours later, my ex was in my living room, and I found out another woman, another traumatic event. And literally 24 hours later, that was February 15th of 2018. And although that quicksand, I felt like pulled me even more after learning that is when I started getting out of it. Because one of the steps in my book, and this is so important if you're in that quicksand, is A, asking for help, and B, learning to rediscovering who you are. That is the big thing, because that person that's in that quicksand is no longer, when you start getting out, is no longer the person you are, right? It's not. You're at rock bottom. I was at rock bottom. And the minute I said, help me, that is when that process of rediscovering yourself starts, because you're no longer that person. And so I do a lot of work with my clients on that, on rediscovering who you are, and what does that look like, because you're saying yes to your life at that moment.
And my experience personally, as well as through my own clients too, is, so if I'm going back to my own personal experience, that is scary as hell. Because it sounds so great. Rediscover who you are. And in the end it is. But holy
crap, girl, let me tell you, when the book came out, and I had some people like even proofread it, some of my friends, and they were like, because they're like, I'm not ready to do this. Like, this is scary. Because in the book, I pose questions at the end of each chapter with journal pages, so that you can start working the steps. And a lot of my clients too, I had one client that she got the book, and she came into my office, and she's like, I'm so pissed at you. And I was like, what? Because I don't make them do the steps. They choose that. I don't push my book on them. But she's like, I'm so pissed at you. And I was like, oh, let me guess. You started step 1. And she's like, yes. And I stopped, because it's so true. It is so scary. We are programmed to want to stay in that comfortable negativity and all of that. It's crazy. And it is so scary. So thank you so much for bringing that up, because it is. And I was terrified. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I don't want to end it there.
No.
For my listeners.
Yeah.
I say that though, because I don't want people thinking, like, I was surprised by that. I thought that I finally decided I was going to break free, but because I didn't then know who this new person even was, what it looked like, sounded like, what she liked, what she didn't like, my immediate thought was to retreat back to what I knew, even though I knew it was awful. That the devil that you know is better than the devil that you don't. And I came face to face with that. And so I felt like it was appropriate to share that. And I think, which is why having, a book like yours or working with a coach or a therapist is so important, to read, to go through and continue the work, Who inspires you now? Where do you get your inspiration from?
Every person. Well, my gosh, there's a bunch of them. Brene Brown, of course. My grandma, who's no longer with me. All the purple. Well, purple obviously is for domestic violence, but all the purple in my cover of my book and everything was for my grandma. That was her favorite color. And literally every single person that becomes vulnerable to talk to me and share their story. Speaking engagements, I have so many people that come up to me and they're like, this is the first time I'm saying this. And I'll sit and talk to them. That is inspiration to me. That is inspired. It doesn't have to be an abusive marriage or relationship. If you are vulnerable to share whatever you've been keeping to yourself, that to me that's what keeps me going. That's inspiration.
Wow. I like that for so many reasons. And I think that it's a really great reminder that you can find inspiration everywhere. If you just pause, right? If you pause for a moment and actually look at the world, wherever you are right now, through the eyes of a child, which is funny that I'm saying through the eyes of a child, as I'm holding a Crayola marker. I
love that.
My pen ran out. I like to take notes when I'm speaking with a guest, so I can oh, that was a gem, and my pen ran out.
I love it.
But when we look at the world and relationships and things that we experience with the curiosity of a child, I think that allows us to see inspiration everywhere.
We are so on the same thing, because that is something I talk about in the book, Rediscovering Yourself. I explain what discovery is. We're like a child. We're trying to learn something new and discover. And it's so funny that you said that, because that's what it means, is that we are a child and we're exploring what this new world is and who we are.
I love it. I love it. Do you have a set of rituals or a morning routine that you use or you have used that have sort of helped you through your journey?
Yes, I talk about that in the book, because morning routine. So in the book, I talk about creating your strength plan, and your strength plan includes time management and, more importantly, self-care and morning routines. So I'm going to be honest, since my accident, my morning routine has not been happening. And let me tell you, I can tell because I don't have as much energy. I don't feel as focused. My morning routine is my roommate and I get up and we go to the gym, or we walk. We have a trail, and we keep each other accountable for that. We had just started swimming, right? We were both in an accident in a limo in Napa with 5 of our girlfriends. And
wait a second, is everyone else okay as well?
Yes, oh my gosh, it could have been so much worse. We are all okay. I think I was injured the worst. I have some ligament tears and a bulging disc and a lumbar sprain. My roommate sprained her back. So we're in PT and all of that stuff, but it could have been, thank you, Jesus, because none of us were in seatbelts. We were in a limo van, and someone ran the stop sign. So it could have been way worse. And it was crazy because I had planned this birthday party for my roommate. And so we had flown to Napa and we had just left our second winery and the trip was over.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, this is my first week where I feel, I still have a lot of pain, but I'm getting back. The first week was horrific, and, I don't have sick leave. So when I don't work, I don't get paid. So that was really hard for me to be able to say, Megan, stop. And I remember posting stuff on Facebook and my friend saying, Megan, stop. You're not going to work. You're not doing interviews. You have to rest. And for me, I'm not used to that. So my morning routine, I'm just going to be honest, I don't have one right now and I need one. I would love to have this be my morning routine every morning and do interviews. But hopefully I get the okay to start PT next week. And, but my morning routine, sorry, that was a really long answer, but my morning routine is definitely working out. And I do usually I do my devotions and stuff at night, but sometimes if I need that expert inspiration, I turn on my Christian music and jam while I'm getting ready. But it's really a time for me to just figure out what the day is about and really get centered. So
I wonder if just for right now, you need to think of another strength plan.
I do.
Just not the old one. Discover a new strength plan for right now.
I totally agree with you. I work as a contractor at a chronic pain facility, just 14 hours a week doing mental health therapy. And I've lived with chronic pain since I was 17. And then going through this 3 weeks ago, again, I was put there for a reason. And I talk a lot with my patients about radical acceptance. And, especially with the people that come in, they are all on workman's comp. So they got hurt at work and they're not working. And looking at, hey, that's no longer your life. And then we get into that rediscover and I've been honest with my patients too, because I'm I'm really struggling right now with where you guys are at, because I may never be able to run again. I may never be able to do this or to do that. So thank you for the reminder, because I'm really working on what I call my grounding skills, to focus just on today. That's all we have is this moment, and everything else doesn't matter. So yes, working and learning on what is now my new schedule going to be. But I think subconsciously I'm waiting to go to my pain doctor on Wednesday to see if I can go to PT, and then I'll be able to schedule a new morning routine.
It's kind of reminding me of, so first of all, once again, thank you for your honesty. I think that's actually part of your appeal.
Is that sometimes I'm blatantly too honest, but yes, thank you.
I don't, but to your point earlier, then you attract the right kind of client.
Right. Yeah.
Because I don't think that we are not for everyone. No one is for everyone.
Exactly.
And you are able to then really get connected with the people who you're meant to serve. I think it's incredible.
Thank you.
And I forget what I was going to say now, but I have a question for you about radical acceptance. I can assume what that means. Can you tell us a little bit more about what you mean by that?
Well, what do you think it means? Because I always like to ask that question first before I talk about it. What do you think? And if you don't want to think about the radical part, it's fine. Just think of the word acceptance. I'm totally putting you on the hot spot.
I know, right? I wasn't prepared for this. I see it as, you're not supposed to use the word when you're defining it, are you? I was going to say accepting sort of what is. Sort of acknowledging what is I guess accepting what is?
Yes, exactly. Accepting what is. So we say we are acknowledging that the past happened, right? It sucked, it hurts, I hate it, blah, blah, blah. But we're closing that door and we are accepting that our life is no longer the same, and that's okay. I'm accepting that I have the choice to make my life whatever I want it to be right here, right now, because I am no longer that person I was when that event happened. That's acceptance. Good job.
Thank you. I think that's a really great way to wrap up the show, except with the one thing about how we're choosing our person.
Yes.
So I have an idea.
Okay.
What about someone on Facebook or LinkedIn, because I've got a lot of people in both, a lot of listeners in both, whoever says I am enough and sort of finishes that sentence, would that be a good way?
Yeah, you're going to have to, I have a feeling I'm surprised. I'm sure someone has probably already done it just now.
Okay, right?
I love it.
And so if there's a ton, because there's going to be a ton, I just know
you will put people in
Yep. And we'll pull a draw. Sound good?
Yes. I love that. So we'll, maybe like by the end of the day.
Okay.
We'll put
by end of day. I am enough because fill in the blank, and that's what will get you entered into the draw. So good luck, everybody. And Megan, thank you so very much. This hour has like totally sped by. I think you're a joy and a gift. And thank you for sharing your time and story with me today.
I love you. Thank you for all you're doing to inspire people around the world. And thank you so much for having me on your show.
My dear. Thank you. And thank you, of course, to all of you, my loyal listeners, and remind you that information about my radio show and my guests can be found at louisehreed.com. Also, a big shout out to my producer, Cameron Steele at Contact Talk Radio Network. The show would not happen without you. In closing, I'd like to leave you with a quote that I heard on a TED Talk a few weeks ago, and I've been mentioning this at the end of my podcast recently. Courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is fear walking. So until next Tuesday at 11 a.m. Eastern, I'm Louise H. Reed, wishing all of you a courageous fear walking day. Goodbye, friends.